Dr. Sarah Mitchell had seen her share of chaos in the emergency room at Georgetown University Hospital, but nothing quite prepared her for the events that would unfold on that cold December evening. The ambulance sirens had been wailing outside for the past hour, bringing in victims from what the news was calling a terrorist attack at a downtown federal building. The hospital was on high alert, with security personnel stationed at every entrance and corridor. Sarah was finishing up with a patient when the automatic doors burst open. Two paramedics rushed in wheeling a stretcher that carried an elderly man in an expensive but blood-stained suit. His silver hair was matted with perspiration, and his breathing was labored. Behind them followed a small army of people in dark suits, their eyes scanning the room with the practiced vigilance of trained professionals. "What do we have?" Sarah called out, immediately taking charge as the attending physician. "Male, approximately 65 years old, multiple gunshot wounds to the chest and abdomen," the paramedic reported quickly. "Lost a lot of blood at the scene. BP is dropping fast, pulse is weak and thready." As they transferred the man to the hospital bed, Sarah caught a glimpse of his face. There was something familiar about him, though she couldn't place where she might have seen him before. His eyes, though clouded with pain, held an intelligence that seemed to pierce right through her. "Sir, can you hear me?" "What's your name?" she asked while immediately beginning her assessment. The man's lips moved weakly, but no sound came out. One of the suited individuals stepped forward. "Doctor, this is a matter of national security. We need to speak with you about this patient's care." Sarah didn't even look up from her work. "Not now. I'm trying to save his life." The man was clearly in critical condition. The bullet wounds were severe, and she could see that one had likely nicked a major artery. His pulse was becoming increasingly weak, and his skin was taking on the pallor that she'd learned to recognize as a sign that time was running out. "Nurse, I need 2 units of O-negative blood, stat. And get me a surgical kit. We're going to have to stop this bleeding now, or we're going to lose him." As Sarah worked to stabilize the patient, she became increasingly aware of the tension in the room. The suited individuals weren't just standing around watching, they were having hushed, urgent conversations with each other. She caught fragments of their discussion. "The secretary is asking for updates every 5 minutes. We need to know what he might have said. If he dies without talking, we're all in deep trouble." Sarah tried to block out the noise and focus on her patient. She had taken an oath to do no harm, to preserve life above all else. Whatever political drama was playing out around her, her job was clear: keep this man alive. The patient's condition continued to deteriorate despite her efforts. His blood pressure kept dropping, and she could see that internal bleeding was more extensive than she had initially thought. This was beyond what could be handled in the emergency room. He needed surgery, and he needed it immediately. "I'm calling for an OR," she announced to the room. "This man needs emergency surgery now." "Doctor," one of the suits interrupted, stepping closer to the bed. "I need to inform you that this patient is Director James Harrison of the Central Intelligence Agency. His condition and treatment are matters of the highest national security classification." Sarah's hands stopped for just a moment. The CIA director. That explained the security presence, the urgency in everyone's voices, the way the hospital administrator had personally come down to check on things. But it didn't change her job. "I don't care if he's the president himself," she said firmly. "Right now, he's my patient, and he's dying. Either help me save his life or get out of my way." The agent's face hardened. "Doctor, you don't understand. Director Harrison was involved in a classified operation that went wrong. There are national security implications that you cannot possibly comprehend." "Then, explain it to me later," Sarah shot back. "Right now, this man is bleeding to death." As if to emphasize her point, the patient's monitor began beeping more rapidly. His pulse was becoming erratic, and his breathing was growing shallower. Sarah could see that they were losing him. "Dr. Mitchell," another voice said from behind her. She turned to see a woman in a navy blue suit, her blonde hair pulled back in a perfect bun. There was an authority in her voice that commanded attention. "I'm Assistant Director Rebecca Chun from the FBI. I need you to understand that Director Harrison may have been compromised. We believe he may have been working with foreign agents. Sarah stared at her in disbelief. Are you seriously suggesting that I should let this man die because you think he might be a traitor? I'm suggesting that there are considerations beyond just medical care. Well, here's a consideration for you, Sarah said, her voice rising. I took an oath to save lives, not to make political judgments about who deserves to live and who doesn't. Now, unless you're planning to physically restrain me, I'm taking this man to surgery. The tension in the room was becoming palpable. Several of the agents had moved closer, and Sarah could sense that they were preparing to intervene. But, before anyone could act, the patient's eyes suddenly opened wide, and he grabbed Sarah's wrist with surprising strength. His voice was barely a whisper, but his words were clear. Doctor, they're not who they say they are. The room fell silent. Every person in the vicinity leaned in slightly, straining to hear what the dying man might reveal. Sir, don't try to talk, Sarah said gently. Save your strength. But Harrison's grip on her wrist tightened. His eyes, now focused with a clarity that seemed impossible given his condition, looked directly into hers. The woman, the blonde, she's not FBI. She's Russian intelligence. They're all. His voice trailed off, and his eyes rolled back. The monitor began emitting the long, steady tone that every medical professional dreaded. He was flatlining. No, Sarah muttered, immediately beginning CPR. Come on, don't you die on me now. As she worked to revive him, she was acutely aware of the sudden change in the room's atmosphere. The agents were no longer focused on the patient, they were looking at each other with expressions that confirmed Harrison's warning. These weren't American intelligence officers. They were something else entirely. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She was surrounded by foreign operatives in the middle of an American hospital. The man she was trying to save wasn't just the CIA director, he was apparently someone who had discovered something so important that an entire team of foreign agents had been deployed to silence him. Step away from the patient, doctor, the blonde woman said, and now her accent was slightly different. Less American, more Eastern European. I'm trying to save his life, Sarah replied, continuing her chest compressions. Step away now, or there will be consequences. Sarah looked around the room. The other agents had spread out, effectively blocking all the exits. The real hospital security was nowhere to be seen, which meant these people had somehow managed to clear the area. She was alone with a team of foreign operatives and a dying CIA director who had just exposed them. Doctor, you have become involved in something much larger than a medical emergency, the woman continued. Director Harrison was selling state secrets to the highest bidder. We are here to ensure that he doesn't reveal the names of his contacts before he dies. So you shot him? That was an unfortunate necessity. The monitor showed that Harrison's heart had stopped completely. Sarah knew that she had perhaps 2 minutes to revive him before brain damage became irreversible. But she also knew that if she succeeded, these people would likely kill both of them to protect their secret. As she continued CPR, her mind raced. Harrison had tried to warn her, but about what exactly? If these people weren't who they claimed to be, then who were the real FBI agents? Where was actual hospital security? And, most importantly, what had Harrison discovered that was worth killing the director of the CIA to cover up? The blonde woman stepped closer. Doctor, I admire your dedication to your patient, but this man is already dead. There's nothing more you can do for him. I decide when my patients are dead, Sarah replied through gritted teeth. Actually, the woman said, pulling something from inside her jacket, I think you'll find that's no longer your decision to make. Sarah's blood ran cold when she saw the gun. This had gone far beyond a medical emergency. She was now trapped in what appeared to be an international incident, with foreign operatives who had just assassinated the head of American intelligence and were now prepared to kill a doctor to cover their tracks. But, as she looked down at Harrison's face, she saw something that made her heart skip. His eyelids were fluttering slightly. He wasn't completely gone yet. There was still a chance to save him, still a chance to find out what he had discovered that was so dangerous. Time to step away, doctor," the woman said, raising the gun. "No," Sarah said firmly, continuing her chest compressions. "I won't abandon my patient." The woman's finger moved to the trigger. "Then, I'm afraid you'll be joining him." Sarah closed her eyes and continued working, knowing that in the next few seconds either she would revive Harrison or they would both be dead. But she had taken an oath, and she would honor it even if it cost her everything. The monitor suddenly beeped once. Then, again. Harrison's heart was responding. "Impossible," the woman muttered. Harrison's eyes opened again, and this time they were clear and focused. He looked directly at Sarah and whispered something that would change both of their lives forever. "Sarah. Charlotte. Michailova." The blonde woman's face went white. She lowered the gun slightly, staring at Harrison in shock. "How do you know that name?" she whispered. Harrison managed a weak smile. "Because, Anya. I know, exactly, who you really are." The room erupted into chaos as the implications of Harrison's words sank in. Sarah didn't understand what was happening, but she knew that whatever Harrison had just revealed had changed everything. The name he had whispered seemed to have struck the blonde woman like a physical blow. As Harrison slipped back into unconsciousness, Sarah realized that she was no longer just a doctor trying to save a patient. She had become a key player in a deadly game of international espionage, and the stakes were higher than she could have ever imagined. The name Sarah Charlotte Michailova hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Sarah stared at the blonde woman, whose composed facade had completely crumbled. The other operatives in the room were looking between their leader and Harrison with obvious confusion, but Sarah could see recognition dawning in some of their eyes. "That's impossible," the woman whispered, her accent now unmistakably Russian. "That name, how could he know that name?" Sarah continued monitoring Harrison's vital signs, but her mind was reeling. The name meant nothing to her, yet it had clearly shaken these operatives to their core. Harrison had used it like a key, unlocking something that had been hidden. "Doctor," Harrison whispered, his eyes opening again. "Listen carefully. The woman, her real name is Anya Volkov. She's not just Russian intelligence. She's the daughter of former KGB Colonel Viktor Volkov. But that's not why she's here." Anya Volkov stepped closer, her gun trained on Harrison's head. "Shut up, old man. You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" Harrison managed a weak chuckle. "I know that Sarah Charlotte Michailova was your sister. I know she died in a car accident in Moscow 15 years ago. And I know that you've been using her identity ever since." The other operatives were now staring at Anya with new understanding. Sarah could see the power dynamic in the room shifting. Whatever Harrison had revealed was more than just intelligence, it was personal. "Your sister," Harrison continued, his voice gaining strength somehow, "was working for us. She was going to defect. She had information about a conspiracy that went all the way to the top of Russian intelligence. But the night before she was supposed to come over, her car went off a bridge. It was an accident," Anya said, but her voice was shaking. "No, it wasn't. It was murder. And I know who ordered it." Sarah looked between them, trying to piece together what was happening. A dead Russian agent, a conspiracy, a sister's murder. It was like something out of a spy novel, except it was happening right in front of her. "The man who killed your sister," Harrison said, "is now the deputy director of Russian foreign intelligence. His name is Alexei Petrov. And, for the past 15 years, you've been planning your revenge." Anya's composure finally broke completely. "He took everything from me. Sarah was the only family I had left. She was going to get us both out, start a new life in America. But, Petrov, he found out about her plans. So you infiltrated his operation," Harrison continued. "You've been feeding him false information while secretly working to expose him. But you needed something big, something that would destroy him completely. That's why you're here." Sarah was beginning to understand. This wasn't just about foreign espionage. This was about revenge, about a sister trying to avenge another sister's murder. But that still didn't explain how Harrison knew all of this. How do you know about my sister? Anya demanded, tears now streaming down her face. Harrison's eyes found Sarah's. Because, Doctor, 15 years ago, I was the CIA officer who was supposed to handle Sarah Charlotte Mikhailova's defection. I was the last person to speak with her before she died. The weight of this revelation settled over the room. Anya lowered her gun slightly, staring at Harrison with a mixture of hatred and desperate hope. You were there? I was supposed to meet her at a safe house outside Moscow. When she didn't show up, we found out about the accident the next morning. I've carried that guilt for 15 years, knowing that we failed to protect her. Sarah could see that Harrison was using his remaining strength to tell this story, pushing himself far beyond what his body could handle. But she could also see why this was so important to him. After Sarah died, Harrison continued, I started investigating. I found evidence that Petrov had ordered her death, but I could never prove it. The case was classified, buried under layers of bureaucracy. But I never forgot her. Anya was openly sobbing now. She was going to marry an American doctor. She said she was going to study medicine herself, help people instead of hurt them. She wanted to have children, a normal life. She showed me a picture, Harrison said quietly. A young woman with blonde hair and green eyes, standing next to the Volga River. She said that was her little sister, the only person who mattered to her in the world. Sarah watched this exchange with fascination and growing dread. The emotional complexity of the situation was staggering, but she was also aware that Harrison's condition was deteriorating again. His blood pressure was dropping, and she could see signs that internal bleeding was resuming. Sir, I need to get you to surgery, she interrupted. This conversation is important, but you're going to die if we don't address your injuries. No, Harrison said firmly. Not yet. Anya, I need you to listen to me. The operation you're part of, it's not what you think it is. Anya wiped her eyes and straightened up. What do you mean? Petrov isn't just using you for revenge against America. He's planning something much bigger. The attack on the federal building today, the attempt on my life, it's all part of a larger plan to destabilize the US government. One of the other operatives, a man with dark hair and a thick accent, stepped forward. Director Harrison is lying, Anya. He's trying to turn you against the mission. Am I? Harrison looked directly at the man. Tell me, Dmitri, when was the last time you spoke with Moscow Center? When was the last time you received direct confirmation of your orders? The man's face tightened. That's operational security. You know you don't have contact because Petrov has cut you off. You're not official Russian intelligence anymore. You're mercenaries, doing Petrov's dirty work while he positions himself to take over the entire Russian intelligence apparatus. Sarah could see the doubt creeping into the faces of the other operatives. Whatever Harrison was saying was clearly hitting close to home. Think about it, Harrison pressed on. When was the last time any of you saw your families? When was the last time you were paid through official channels? Petrov has been isolating you, making you dependent on him alone. Anya was looking around at her team with new eyes. Is this true? The operatives exchanged glances, but none of them spoke up to contradict Harrison's claims. Anya, Harrison said, your sister didn't just have information about corruption in Russian intelligence. She had evidence that Petrov was planning a coup, planning to overthrow the current government and install himself as the head of a new regime. That's why he killed her. And that's why he's been using you. The blonde woman stumbled backward, the full weight of the deception hitting her. No, that can't be true. He promised me justice for Sarah. He said he would help me destroy the people who killed her. He is the person who killed her. And now he's using your grief and your skills to help him consolidate power. Every mission you've completed, every piece of intelligence you've gathered, it's all been to strengthen his position. Sarah watched as Anya's world collapsed around her. The woman had spent 15 years planning revenge, only to discover that she had been working for her sister's killer the entire time. The federal building attack today, Harrison continued, was designed to eliminate 3 specific targets: myself, Senator Richardson from the Intelligence Committee, and Admiral Foster from the NSA. We were all getting close to exposing Petrov's network in Washington. Network? Sarah asked, unable to remain silent. Harrison turned to her. Doctor, there are at least 50 Russian assets embedded in the US government, all reporting to Petrov. He's been building this network for 2 decades, waiting for the right moment to activate it. And that moment is now? Next week. There's going to be a joint session of Congress to address the terrorist attack. Every major government official will be in one place. Petrov plans to eliminate the entire chain of succession and install his own people in the chaos that follows. The scope of the conspiracy was staggering. Sarah looked around at the operatives, trying to process the idea that they were part of a plot to overthrow the US government. But why tell me all this? Anya asked, her voice barely audible. Because you have a choice to make. You can continue working for the man who murdered your sister, or you can help me stop him. But, either way, you need to know the truth. Harrison's monitor started beeping more rapidly again. Sarah could see that he was pushing himself too hard, that his body couldn't take much more of this emotional and physical stress. Sir, I really need to get you to surgery now, she said urgently. Doctor, Harrison said, reaching out to grab her hand again. There's something else you need to know. Something about yourself. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. What do you mean? Your full name is Sarah Charlotte Mitchell, isn't it? Yes, but I don't understand. Your mother's maiden name was Mikhailova. She was Russian, wasn't she? She immigrated to the United States in the 1990s? Sarah stared at him in shock. How do you know about my mother? Because, doctor, you're not here by accident. Your mother was Elena Mikhailova, sister to Viktor Mikhailova, who later became Viktor Volkov when he changed his name after defecting to the KGB. That makes you and Anya cousins. The room fell completely silent. Sarah felt as though the floor had dropped out from under her. Anya was staring at her with wide eyes, seeing her for the first time. That's impossible, Sarah whispered. Your mother never told you about her family because she was trying to protect you. Viktor Volkov, your uncle, was one of the most ruthless KGB operatives of his generation. When he died, his daughter Anya inherited his network of contacts and his thirst for revenge. Sarah looked at Anya, and, suddenly, she could see the family resemblance. The shape of the eyes, the line of the jaw, the way she held herself when she was thinking. They were family. Anya, Harrison continued, the sister you lost wasn't just someone who happened to share a name with Dr. Mitchell. She was your cousin Sarah Charlotte Mikhailova, named after the American cousin your father told you about but never let you meet. Anya moved closer to Sarah, studying her face intently. Elena's daughter? Sarah nodded numbly. My mother, she died when I was 12. She never talked about her family in Russia. She said it was too painful. She was trying to protect you from this world, Harrison said. But fate has brought you together anyway. The implications were staggering. Sarah wasn't just a random doctor who had gotten caught up in international espionage. She was part of the family drama that had been playing out for decades, connected by blood to both the victim and the avenger. Petrov killed your cousin, Harrison told Anya. And now he's using you to threaten your other cousin. Can you see the cruel irony in that? Anya was trembling now, the gun hanging loose in her hand. All these years. I thought I was alone. I thought Sarah was the only family I had left. You're not alone, Sarah said quietly. I may not understand all of this, but I understand family. Harrison's eyes were closing again. Doctor, surgery, now. But, first, Anya needs to make a choice. Help us, stop Petrov, or let him destroy everything your sister died trying to protect. The monitor was showing dangerous fluctuations in Harrison's vital signs. Sarah knew they had perhaps minutes before they lost him completely. But she also knew that the choice Anya made in the next few moments would determine not just Harrison's fate, but potentially the fate of the country. Anya, she said, using her cousin's real name for the first time. Whatever you decide, decide quickly. If we don't get him to surgery now, he's going to die, and, with him, any chance of stopping this conspiracy. Anya looked around at her team, then, back at Sarah and Harrison. Dmitri, contact the others. Tell them the mission parameters have changed. Anya, what are you doing? What I should have done 15 years ago, she said, dropping her gun to the floor. I'm choosing family over revenge. I'm choosing to save lives instead of taking them. She turned to Sarah. Cousin, save his life. And, then, help me destroy the man who killed our family. The operating room at Georgetown University Hospital had been hastily secured and cleared. Sarah worked with focused intensity, her hands steady despite the extraordinary circumstances that had led to this moment. Harrison lay on the table before her, his life hanging by the thinnest of threads, while outside the OR, his survival had become the key to preventing what could be the most devastating attack on American soil since 9/11. Dr. Elizabeth Chen, the hospital's chief of surgery, had been briefed on the basic situation, that their patient was the CIA director and that national security was at stake. But Sarah hadn't told her about the family connections, the Russian conspiracy, or the fact that the woman now standing guard outside the OR was both a foreign operative and her long-lost cousin. Blood pressure is stabilizing, announced Dr. Chen as she worked alongside Sarah. But the damage to the abdominal cavity is extensive. That bullet did a lot of traveling before it settled. Sarah focused on repairing the damage to Harrison's liver while Dr. Chen worked on the chest wounds. The director had lost an enormous amount of blood, and his body had already begun shutting down non-essential functions. They were operating against time in multiple ways, not just to save his life, but to get him stable enough to provide the intelligence needed to stop Petrov's plot. Tell me about this conspiracy, Dr. Chen said quietly as they worked. How much of what I'm hearing is real? Sarah glanced at the observation window, where Anya stood watching the surgery with intense focus. Her former operatives had been neutralized, some had chosen to switch sides when they learned the truth about Petrov's deception, while others had been quietly detained by actual FBI agents who had finally arrived on the scene. More real than I want to believe, Sarah replied. The man we're operating on is one of the few people who knows the full scope of what's coming. If we lose him, we lose our best chance of stopping it. The surgery continued in relative silence for the next hour. Sarah found herself thinking about her mother, Elena Mikhailova, and the secrets she had carried to her grave. Elena had fled Russia with nothing but a young daughter and a determination to build a new life. She had never spoken of the family she left behind, never mentioned that she had a brother in the intelligence services, never revealed that the quiet life she had built in suburban Virginia was a conscious rejection of a world of violence and espionage. She was protecting me, Sarah murmured to herself as she carefully sutured a damaged blood vessel. What was that? Dr. Chen asked. Nothing. How are his vitals? Better. The transfusions are working, and his blood pressure is holding steady. I think we're going to save him. Outside the OR, the situation was becoming increasingly complex. The real FBI had arrived and were trying to sort out who was who among the operatives. Anya had provided them with a detailed breakdown of her team's backgrounds and current status, but there were still questions about how to handle the situation legally and diplomatically. Agent David Walsh, the FBI's counterterrorism specialist, was coordinating with CIA Deputy Director James McKenna to understand the full scope of the threat. They had Harrison's preliminary intelligence about Petrov's network, but they needed more details to identify and neutralize the embedded assets before the planned attack. Dr. Mitchell, Agent Walsh's voice came through the intercom. How much longer before Director Harrison can be debriefed? Sarah looked at Harrison's unconscious form. They had successfully repaired most of the damage, but his body had endured tremendous trauma. He needs at least 12 hours of recovery before he can handle any kind of stress. Maybe 24 to be safe. We may not have 24 hours. Intelligence indicates that Petrov's timeline may have been moved up due to today's events. Dr. Chen glanced at Sarah. What does that mean exactly? It means they're going to accelerate whatever they have planned, Sarah replied. Anya mentioned something about a joint session of Congress. If that's their target, and they think Harrison might survive to expose them, they'll want to move before he can talk.
The implications were terrifying.
A successful attack on Congress during a joint session would decapitate the American government, creating exactly the kind of chaos that would allow foreign operatives to seize control of key institutions. "Dr. Mitchell," came another voice through the intercom.
This time it was Anya. "May I speak with you privately when you're finished?"
Sarah felt a strange mix of emotions at hearing her cousin's voice. Here was family she had never known existed, but under circumstances that made any normal relationship impossible. Anya was a foreign operative who had spent years planning revenge, while Sarah was an American doctor who had lived her entire life believing she had no family beyond her late parents. "Almost finished here," Sarah replied.
The final stages of the surgery went smoothly.
Harrison's body seemed to be responding well to the treatment, and his vital signs were stabilizing at acceptable levels. Dr. Chin began closing the chest cavity while Sarah finished with the abdominal repairs. "He's going to make it," Dr. Chen announced with satisfaction. "It was touch and go for a while, but he's a tough old bird." As they completed the surgery and moved Harrison to the recovery room, Sarah felt a profound sense of accomplishment mixed with dread. They had saved his life, but the larger crisis was far from over. She found Anya waiting in a small conference room adjacent to the recovery ward.
Her cousin looked exhausted, the emotional weight of the day's revelations clearly taking their toll.
When Sarah entered, Anya looked up with eyes that held a mixture of hope and uncertainty.
"I've been thinking about what Director Harrison told us," Anya said without preamble. "About our mothers, about the family connections we never knew about." Sarah sat down across from her. "It's a lot to process. I have something that belongs to you."
Anya reached into her jacket and pulled out a small, worn photograph.
This was my sister Sarah's most prized possession. She carried it everywhere. Sarah took the photograph and felt her breath catch.
It showed two young women standing by what looked like a Russian river. One was clearly Anya's sister, blonde, beautiful, with the same green eyes that Anya possessed. The other was unmistakably her mother, Elena, but decades younger than Sarah had ever seen her. They stayed in touch, Anya explained. Even after Elena left for America, even after our father forbade any contact with defectors. Sarah would send letters through a network of contacts, and Elena would respond when she could.
My mother never mentioned any of this.
She was protecting you from our world.
But she never forgot about family. Look at the back of the photograph.
Sarah turned the photo over and saw handwriting in both Russian and English. The Russian text was unfamiliar to her, but the English was clear: "For my American niece Sarah Charlotte, who I hope to meet someday."
Your cousin, Sarah Charlotte Michailova. The connection was undeniable.
Her mother had maintained a secret relationship with her Russian family, even going so far as to name her daughter after the cousin she hoped they would someday meet. The tragedy was that instead of meeting under happy circumstances, they had been brought together by violence and conspiracy. "There's more," Anya continued. "Director Harrison wasn't just the CIA officer assigned to handle my sister's defection.
He specifically requested that assignment because he knew about Elena's family in America.
He was hoping to reunite the sisters as part of the defection process."
Sarah stared at her cousin. "Are you saying that Harrison knew about me this whole time?"
"Not about you specifically, but about Elena's daughter. When your mother died, he kept track of you from a distance. He knew you became a doctor, knew you worked at this hospital."
"I don't think it's a coincidence that he ended up here tonight." The web of connections was becoming almost too complex to follow.
Sarah felt as though she were discovering that her entire life had been shaped by forces she never knew existed. Her mother's immigration, her choice to become a doctor, even her assignment to Georgetown University Hospital, all of it potentially influenced by intelligence officers and family secrets that stretched back decades.
"Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I need you to understand something important.
When I decided to switch sides, when I chose to help stop Petrov, it wasn't just about revenge for my sister's death.
It was about family. About the family I thought I'd lost forever." Anya leaned forward, her expression intense. "My sister Sarah died believing that family was the only thing worth living for.
She was going to give up everything, her country, her identity, her entire life, just for the chance to know her American cousin and your mother.
I won't let Petrov destroy any more families.
Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes. The emotional weight of discovering this lost family history, combined with the stress of the surgery and the ongoing crisis, was almost overwhelming.
What happens now? She asked.
Now we work together to stop him. Director Harrison has the intelligence we need, but he's going to need time to recover.
Petrov's network will be planning their next move, and we need to be ready for them. I'm a doctor, not a spy.
You're more than that now. You're the only person who can get close to Harrison without raising suspicion. You're his doctor, and you're family to me.
That makes you the perfect intermediary. Sarah understood what her cousin was suggesting.
She would need to be more than just Harrison's physician. She would need to be a conduit for intelligence and a participant in whatever plan they developed to stop the conspiracy.
The other operatives on your team, can they be trusted?
Most of them, yes. When they learned the truth about Petrov's deception, they realized they'd been betrayed just as much as I had. Dmitry and 3 others have agreed to work with the FBI to identify Petrov's assets in Washington.
2 others are requesting political asylum in exchange for full cooperation. And the ones who didn't switch sides? Anya's expression hardened. They've been neutralized. They chose to remain loyal to Petrov even after learning the truth. That makes them dangerous to everyone.
Sarah nodded, trying to process the idea that people had died as a direct result of the events she had become entangled in. The world of espionage was brutal and unforgiving, with consequences that extended far beyond the individual players.
Agent Walsh wants to brief us on what they've learned about Petrov's timeline, Anya continued. But first, I want you to know that whatever happens next, I'm glad we found each other. I'm glad our family isn't completely gone.
Sarah reached across the table and took her cousin's hand. Despite everything, the violence, the deception, the international conspiracy, there was something profoundly moving about discovering family in such an unlikely place.
I'm glad too, Sarah said.
But let's make sure we both survive long enough to get to know each other properly.
Anya smiled, and, for the first time since they'd met, Sarah could see past the trained operative to the woman underneath, someone who had spent 15 years planning revenge but was now choosing hope and family instead. Director Harrison should be conscious in a few hours, Sarah said.
When he is, we'll need to be ready with questions and a plan.
Because if Petrov is accelerating his timeline, we may only have one chance to stop him.
They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, 2 cousins who had found each other in the midst of international intrigue, bound together by family history and a shared determination to prevent a catastrophe that could reshape the world. Harrison regained consciousness 18 hours after surgery, his eyes focusing slowly on Sarah's face as she checked his vital signs. The recovery room had been transformed into a secure briefing area, with FBI agents stationed at every entrance and sophisticated electronic surveillance equipment monitoring for any signs of intrusion.
Dr. Mitchell, Harrison said weakly, his voice hoarse but clear. How long was I out? Almost a full day, Sarah replied, adjusting his 4 fluids.
Your body needed time to recover from the trauma.
How do you feel?
Like I'd been shot by Russian operatives, he said with a wry smile.
But, alive, thanks to you. Sarah had spent the past 18 hours learning more about international espionage than she had ever wanted to know.
Agent Walsh and Deputy Director McKenna had briefed her on Petrov's network, showing her photographs and dossiers of the embedded assets they had identified. The scope of the conspiracy was staggering. 53 Russian operatives had infiltrated key positions throughout the U.S. government over the past 20 years.
Sir, we need to debrief you as soon as you're able, Agent Walsh said, entering the room with McKenna and Anya. Intelligence indicates that Petrov has moved up his timeline.
The joint session of Congress has been scheduled for tomorrow morning to address the federal building attack.
Harrison tried to sit up but winced in pain. Sarah gently pushed him back down. Easy. You're not ready for that much movement yet. Tomorrow morning? Harrison's eyes widened. That's much faster than we anticipated. Has there been any chatter about the specific operational details? That's what we need from you, McKenna said. You mentioned that you were close to exposing Petrov's network. What exactly did you discover?
Harrison closed his eyes for a moment, gathering his thoughts. 3 months ago, we intercepted communications that suggested a major operation was being planned against Washington. We traced the communications back to Alexei Petrov, but we couldn't get a clear picture of the scope or timeline. He paused to catch his breath before continuing. What we discovered was that this wasn't just about a terrorist attack. It was about regime change. Petrov has been positioning his assets not just to cause chaos, but to be in place to restore order afterward, under Russian influence.
How would that work practically? Anya asked.
Her knowledge of Petrov's methods was proving invaluable in understanding the conspiracy. The joint session will have the President, Vice President, Speaker of the House, Senate President pro tempore, and the entire cabinet in one location. If something were to happen to all of them simultaneously, the presidential succession would fall to people who aren't normally in that line, people who Petrov has been preparing for years. Sarah felt a chill run through her.
You're talking about decapitating the entire U.S. government. Exactly. But, more than that, replacing it with people who are already compromised.
Within hours of the attack, there would be a new leadership structure in place, one that would be sympathetic to Russian interests.
Agent Walsh was taking notes rapidly. What kind of attack are we looking at? Explosives? Chemical weapons?
Neither, Harrison said. Something much more elegant and untraceable. We believe they're planning to use a biological agent, something that would look like a natural outbreak initially, but would be designed to target specific individuals who have been exposed to a particular trigger compound.
The room fell silent as the implications sank in.
A biological attack would be almost impossible to defend against and would create exactly the kind of chaos needed for a power grab. The trigger compound, Anya said slowly. That would have to be something that all the targets had been exposed to recently, but that wouldn't arouse suspicion.
Water? Food? McKenna suggested.
More likely something in the air circulation system of the Capitol building, Harrison replied. Our intelligence suggests that Petrov's people have had access to the building's infrastructure for months.
Sarah's medical training kicked in. What kind of biological agent could be activated by a trigger compound?
Something engineered specifically for this purpose.
Probably a modified virus that remains dormant until activated by a specific chemical signal. When activated, it would cause rapid onset symptoms that would mimic a heart attack or stroke. The sophistication of the plot was terrifying.
It wasn't just about causing mass casualties, it was about precisely targeting specific individuals while leaving others unharmed, allowing for a controlled transition of power.
How do we stop it? Sarah asked.
First, we need to identify exactly who in the building has been exposed to the trigger compound.
Second, we need to find and neutralize the biological agent before it can be released. And, third, we need to arrest Petrov's assets before they can implement the succession plan. Agent Walsh looked skeptical.
That's a lot to accomplish in less than 24 hours, especially when we don't know who we can trust in the government.
We have an advantage, Anya said. I know Petrov's methods.
He's careful and methodical, but he's also predictable. He would want to be able to control the timing of the release precisely, which means there has to be a manual activation system.
Someone on the inside, McKenna concluded. More than one person. Petrov never relies on single points of failure.
There would be at least 3 separate activation protocols, probably coordinated from different locations within the Capitol complex. Harrison struggled to sit up again, and this time Sarah helped him into a more upright position.
There's something else. Petrov wouldn't just want to eliminate the current leadership.
He'd want to make sure his own people survived the attack. That means they would have been given some kind of protection, probably a prophylactic treatment that would neutralize the biological agent.
Can we identify people who have received unusual medical treatments recently? Sarah asked.
That's actually brilliant, Agent Walsh said. We can cross-reference government personnel who have had any kind of medical intervention in the past month against our list of suspected assets.
McKenna was already on his phone, coordinating with other agencies to compile the necessary data.
The investigation was moving at breakneck speed, but Sarah could see the exhaustion in everyone's faces.
They were racing against time to prevent what could be the most devastating attack in American history.
"There's one more thing," Harrison said, his voice growing weaker.
"Petrov himself will be in Washington tomorrow." Anya's head snapped up. "That's impossible. He never leaves Moscow for operational activities. He's here under diplomatic cover, ostensibly to discuss the federal building attack with the State Department.
But we believe he wants to personally oversee the final phase of the operation." For Anya, this changed everything. The man who had murdered her sister, who had manipulated her for years, who had orchestrated this entire conspiracy, he would finally be within reach. "Where is he staying?" she asked, her voice tight with controlled emotion.
"The Russian embassy."
"But he's scheduled to visit several locations around the city tomorrow, including a morning briefing at the State Department that would put him just blocks from the capital."
Sarah could see the internal struggle playing out on her cousin's face.
This was the moment Anya had been planning for 15 years, the chance to finally confront her sister's killer. But it was also a moment when personal revenge could interfere with the larger mission. "I want to be the one to arrest him," Anya said. "That's not going to be possible," Agent Walsh replied. "You're not a law enforcement officer, and diplomatic immunity complicates." "He's not going to surrender quietly," Anya interrupted.
"And he knows me. If I'm there, if he sees me, it might throw him off balance enough to make mistakes." Harrison was studying Anya carefully. "You're thinking about more than just revenge, aren't you?"
"I'm thinking that Petrov is too smart to leave obvious evidence lying around. But if he's confronted by someone he thought he had completely manipulated, someone who represents the failure of his greatest deception, he might reveal information we can't get any other way." It was a risky strategy, but Sarah could see the logic in it. Petrov's reaction to seeing Anya again, to realizing that his carefully constructed web of manipulation had collapsed, might provide crucial intelligence about other aspects of his operation.
"What do you need from me?" Sarah asked.
"I need you to stay with Director Harrison and coordinate the medical response," Anya replied. "If we're wrong about any of this, if the biological attack still happens, you'll be the only person who understands both the medical and intelligence aspects of what we're dealing with.
And if you're right?
Then, by tomorrow evening, this will all be over, and we can start learning how to be a family."
Sarah felt a profound sense of admiration for her cousin.
Anya had spent 15 years consumed by revenge, but when the moment came to choose between personal vengeance and protecting innocent lives, she had chosen to protect others. "Agent Walsh," Harrison said, "I want Dr. Mitchell given full security clearance and access to all operational information. She's proven herself today, and we're going to need her expertise." "Sir, that's highly irregular. So is having the CIA director operated on by a doctor who turns out to be related to the enemy operative who saved his life."
"I think we're past worrying about regular procedures."
Sarah found herself officially inducted into an intelligence operation, something that would have been unimaginable just 48 hours earlier. But, as she looked around the room at the people who were now depending on her, her cousin who had chosen family over revenge, the CIA director whose life she had saved, the FBI agents who were working to prevent a catastrophe, she realized that she had found her place in this impossible situation. "The operation begins at dawn," Agent Walsh announced. "Teams will be in position at the Capitol, the State Department, and the Russian embassy. Dr. Mitchell, you'll be at a command center with full medical and communications equipment. Director Harrison, you'll provide operational oversight from here."
"And Anya?" Sarah asked. "Anya will be with the team confronting Petrov."
"It's her choice, and it's our best chance of getting him to reveal everything." As the briefing concluded and people began to disperse to their final preparations, Sarah found herself alone with Harrison for a moment. "Sir," she said, "there's something I need to ask you."
"Did you really know about my family connections before tonight?" Harrison smiled weakly. "Doctor, in the intelligence business, there are very few coincidences."
"I've been keeping track of Elena's family for 20 years, hoping that someday there might be a way to reunite the sisters or honor their memory. When I realized that Dr. Sarah Mitchell was the daughter of Elena Michailova, I thought perhaps there might be a way to bring some good out of all the tragedy."
So you arranged for me to be here tonight?
I arranged for you to be working at this hospital, yes. But, the events of tonight, the attack, Anya's presence, those were genuine coincidences.
Sometimes fate works in mysterious ways. Sarah shook her head in amazement. My entire life has been shaped by this conspiracy, hasn't it?
Your life has been shaped by people who loved you enough to protect you from this world. Your mother, your cousin's sister, even Anya herself in her own way, they all made sacrifices to try to keep you safe.
But, sometimes, despite everyone's best efforts, we're called to step into the fight.
As Sarah prepared for what could be the most important day of her life, she thought about the choices that had led her to this moment. Her mother's decision to flee Russia, her choice to become a doctor, Anya's decision to choose family over revenge, Harrison's determination to honor the memory of a defector who had died 20 years ago.
Tomorrow would bring the final confrontation with Petrov and his conspiracy.
But, tonight, for the first time since childhood, Sarah knew she wasn't alone in the world. She had found family in the most unlikely place, and, together they would either save their adopted country or die trying.